Welcome back to TOY.
Thanks, Anne.
This is your second feedback session, and we've dealt with three topics: the fourth industrial revolution and its implication for careers and the works of the future, the jobs of the future. Then we took a look at the three, or the broad focus of your career, and there was a preference towards ideas and a slightly higher preference to working with people rather than constant object and task focus. Also, the dynamic and stable nature of your environment or your career ought to be somewhere in between, with a slight inclination towards a little bit more dynamic. And now we're delving into the other remaining topics. So before we continue, are there any questions that you have that might have popped up as we took a break?
No, Jan, I think we discussed it quite thoroughly. So yeah, I'm ready.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So let's start. The third aspect that we need to take into account when starting career research and choosing a career is the practical nature of the career versus the theoretical. So this is fascinating, that some careers are extremely practical. For instance, dentistry. Dentistry is actually quite practical. You work physically with your hands. But depending on which field of medicine, surgery, extremely practical, versus other fields of medicine might be a little bit more theoretical. It really depends on the application, and it can inform us greatly as to what type of approach you would like to take to your career. So what we can see here, Datoy, is you've got a definite preference towards working with a theoretical, a theoretically inclined career content, but not radically so. So there are still some practical implications that you would like to see happen, but there is a preference towards theory. But we're not talking here working constantly with theory. We're not talking here researching quantum physics and becoming a theoretical statistician, for instance. We're talking here about working with ideas and abstract concepts that have some form of practical implication. Does that make sense to you?
It does, Jan. Yeah. Once again, in my description that I read before we had this session, exactly what you mentioned now, where you have to work with abstract ideas or difficult concepts, and how that is expressed in real life or in your physical reality, was something that's really touched a base with me, because I really I like struggling with ideas and concepts, but then the question, okay, what is the implications for me or for someone else, is a question that I very naturally ask after working or thinking or even debating about these theoretical constructs. So it was interesting to see, and I also like the fact that a theoretical construct can be a challenging idea or concept. That's why the abstractness of it, of the idea, can sometimes be, if it's very challenging, be something that I really enjoy. And yeah, I think it shows in this graft.
Fantastic. Absolutely love hearing the feedback, and I trust it's also empowering. Yet again, we have to take into account that not all careers are equal, not all environments are equal, and no single person's behavioral patterns are equal or the same. So you are, in a very, very definite sense, quite unique. So there are careers that start off and remain complex. So the next phase will be working with the complexity index of your career. This has to do with how much thinking work and abstract grappling will be necessary for you based on your behavioral patterns to be present in any given career that you choose. So what we can see here, Detoy, is there is a definite slant towards working with complex content, but yet again, not overly complex to the point where we just think and never act. So I just want to read that sentence there. Your specific preference is to work with ideas, concepts, and thinking, and some examples are legal work, software development, engineering, architecture, finance, journaling. And I would like to bring up what you actually have been studying in your formal studies for quite a while. You have 2 qualifications, hey? What are they?
3 young. I did a BA
3.
general with psychology and history as my majors. And I
Mm-hmm.
did an honors in both psychology and history after that, with the aim to do a master's or doctorate in psychology.
Fascinating. And yet again, confirming your behavioral patterns to working with ideas. There's a definite preference. Nobody does an honors in history purely because of the amount of work available in the field, hey?
No.
So what stimulated you most about your qualifications? What did you enjoy?
Yes, I think I'm really going to focus on my psychology, Jan.
Mm-hmm.
The elements that I enjoyed the most in psychology was the ideas regarding how people function and why they function as they do. So, for instance, the sphere of social psychology is something that I really enjoy, as well as cognitive psychology.
Mm.
So, just how in life and in our general living, there's certain things we do and the studies behind why that is what we do. And then, of course, there's exceptions to the studies and to the rules. Um, so being stimulated theoretically and having to grapple with how that theory, in many cases, is different from my worldview or my way of understanding the world, and actually wrestling with that reality, taking the personal, my subjective identity out of the theory and just seeing it for what it is. It is information, and then seeing how that influences a practical reality. I think that is always very important to me. If it's just theoretical, if it's just all these theories, but I don't see the practical expression thereof, I struggle at times. But yeah, with this complexity index, absolutely, I actually feel a bit stronger regarding that. I want to be challenged mentally when I'm working with ideas or concepts, because it helps me to broaden my understanding of reality.
Fantastic. So here's the big thing. Like your own profile indicates, the next question that many people ask is, so what? Now what now? Now that I have this insight, what do I do? So this is where we progress to a next phase, and it actually becomes exactly what we said at the very beginning, is it becomes a coaching relationship. We must do something with the info now. So what follows are some important career tips. These are not they're not advice. We're not saying go and study law because you absolutely fit the profile of a lawyer. This is not what we're saying. What we are saying is These are some tips based on your behavioral patterns to keep in mind when you start exploring different jobs. So at this point, we need to just highlight, we will probably never tell someone, this is what the report says, this is the definitive answer, go and do this. Life is just plainly too complex. The fourth industrial revolution and some other aspects like the VUCA world, VUCA being volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, which dominates our current reality, means that advice can be extremely short-lived. And in the shifting realities of what we're currently facing, it might actually be quite harmful to give solid, immutable, unchangeable advice to someone. So this will turn into a relationship of discovery where you take up some responsibility to actually go and do proper research and talk to people, or go and read up on industries, fields of study, and whether determining whether study would actually be the best approach for you or not. So what we're saying is we are throwing this wide open with these tips to keep in mind based on your behavioral patterns. So this is highly individualized DTOI. This is like DTOI on paper, and it will literally differ for every single person that does this report. So the first thing that it points out is immediacy and being quick. Your preferred career is one with a level of time urgency as part of the job. So in other words, if you sit and wait for everything, there's going to be a sense of urgency that's not being met, and I suspect you might even become frustrated very easily. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to wait for long periods of time for feedback or moving forward, and what did that do to you?
Yeah, and I can't necessarily think of an example right now, but
Okay.
I am impatient by nature. So if I have a conversation with someone, or we're speaking about something or getting to an idea, or even better yet, if I sit in a group or in a classroom discussion where the discussion is leading in a direction and we're taking too long to get there, I get very frustrated and I have to bite my lip a lot, or many times, not to just jump in and say, this is the answer, can we just get done with it and continue? So, or not the answer, but this is an idea, can we just move on or get to the gist of the situation? Not that I have all the answers. So I'm a bit impatient in that sense, yes.
Have you ever been in an environment where it was fast-paced and quite theoretically challenging? So the pace was quick, while there was a complexity that was high with some theoretical challenges. Have you ever been in such an environment?
I think in some of my psychology honors classes, I experienced something like that, quite similar. Yeah, and really enjoyed it. With the risk of sometimes feeling a bit intimidated, I think. But that's also something you just have to manage.
That's it. Brilliant, brilliant self-knowledge there. The second career tip is to simplify work content. Your behavioral pattern for simplification, or to simplify things, is high. It's a strong habit, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And working in an environment where you actively simplify ideas will give you quite a kick. The stronger a behavioral pattern is present, the greater the degree of satisfaction you will experience by fulfilling it. And if it's not met to the degree that you show in your report, you might become very frustrated and possibly even just leave the situation entirely. So something to keep in mind is working with ideas and concepts, yet again, that complexity index, and simplifying it possibly for others will bring you a great degree of satisfaction. Immediately we're thinking about teaching, lecturing, um, uh, possibly even areas where this applies as journalism, that type of stuff, where we take concepts and ideas and render it in as simple as possible terms. Does that resonate with you?
Definitely. I think that's also why I sometimes get frustrated with situations, like I mentioned before, where we take too long to get to a point. I want to simplify something and structure it in a way that's easy, that you can get grips on it quite easily, and it's not an intimidating idea or concept.
Fantastic. This might be a little bit of a strange thing to note at this point, but based on your behavioral patterns, I would, some of the tips would be, or one of the big tips is recovering from failure. Some jobs or careers actually require from the people that are in the field to recover from failure quite quickly and constantly. We're talking about people that work with drug addicts, for instance, and help people in severely addicted situations. The chance and rate of failure is quite high, and you need a certain behavioral pattern set to work in that environment. We're talking about criminal law lawyers who frequently defend their clients, and they lose the cases quite frequently, and then they just go at it again. So it probably has to do with a combination of the level of natural resilience that you show, sometimes one's self-confidence, but be very aware of the fact that careers that will entail a high failure index or a high degree of failure present in the work might eventually get to you, and it might become a negative experience. Does that make sense?
It does, Jan. I mean, I've seen in my life where if I attempt something, if I I fail with the same, let's say I do a puzzle or a game or something, and I fail continuously, I get very frustrated up to a point where I want to break my phone or something. So,
Whoa.
so
I've got another coaching program that can help with anger management.
I think it depends on how long I've been busy with it. So having success in the stuff that I do is very important for me, because yeah, I just enjoy having the satisfaction of completing something or finishing something and not feeling that I've failed in it. I think there's a mindset issue to that as well. I am very competitive, but
Fascinating.
yeah, but I mean, it definitely makes sense that I shouldn't engage with high failure situations too often. I think I can deal with failure, but if it becomes overwhelming, I think it will leave me quite stressed or negative or quite negatively emotionally influenced by it.
Fantastic. Brilliant self-insight there. So Detoy, working with unpredictable content, yet again, that's the stable versus dynamic index that's feeding into that. And I just want to read, we live in a changing world, so nobody can guarantee that any career at this point will fundamentally change. The world is on a trajectory that is heading towards fast-paced, disruptive change, and we are going to have to work with that reality for quite a while, especially in our post-COVID world, what they're terming the new normal. Not that it will be normal in any case, but your optimal career should be an ever-changing. Your optimal career should not be an ever-changing reality. So the core of your career should not constantly shift. There ought to be some dynamic elements, but the essence should basically remain the same. When things change and you have to adapt, make sure that the nature of your work remains reliable. Once you have decided to do something, try to stick to it. Once you are in a job, try to stick with it for at least 2 years, because too many changes can make you lose interest in that career. So that is actually a fascinating point. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I can definitely resonate with the sentence that says your optimal career should not be an ever-changing reality.
Mm,
It should also not be similar every single day.
that's
So
it.
I think it comes back to your stable and more flexible work environments. But sticking with a career for at least 2 years, I think to an extent, yes, because then I feel that I start mastering stuff. So that's definitely of value
Mm-hmm.
to me. But I've been in the past, I've seen where I've worked with or um, I started engaging in certain forms of functioning career-wise, and then it was so frustrating, or it was not exactly who I want to be, or doesn't really suit my other styles of functioning. And I decided to remove myself before the 2 year mark. So I think for
Mm.
me, there's a balance between something that you do and enjoy and sticking to that for 2 years, that I absolutely agree with. But on the other hand, if it was something I really did not enjoy, or something that um, didn't feed on my other elements of functioning as well,
Mm.
it was something I decided to cut off from, because I didn't feel that it necessarily served me in a positive way as it should.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Tatoy. So you said you enjoy working with people to a degree, and your basic focus of your career showed that definitely. Some careers are extremely conflict driven. Working and engaging with people that are fundamentally different, because that's the basis of conflict, right? Is you think, act, and feel different to what I do, and we're struggling to find some form of consensus. So what we are seeing is you will experience positive conflict as energy. So as long as there's healthy debate, working with ideas and concepts. But the moment conflict becomes negative, it's going to start draining you. So you might, and this is fascinating, be careful not to manage your career in the direction of intense conflict, like politics, law, and some instances, even general customer services, where, where conflict might be constant and quite intense, actually. Some people thrive on that type of conflict and resolving it properly. And for others, it's quite of a battle and challenge over the long haul. This shows that you're somewhere in between. You like dealing with a robust, conflict-driven ideas, that type of stuff, um, debate, and we can differ from each other. But the moment it becomes a constant bashing and working and grappling with it, it might become tiresome. Anything that you want to comment on that?
Yeah, and with that, I think the most important thing for me, or the best way to define it for me, is I don't like to fight with people at all, but
Mm.
I do like to grapple with ideas. So if it's an
Mm.
intellectual fight or duel, I really thrive from it, and it really gives me a lot of energy. And I've always felt that I've been drawn to people who think and act differently than I do. But the moment I'm in a position where I have to work harshly with people or fight with
Mm.
people, I tend to shy away from that quite often,
Mm.
and even sometimes to my own detriment, which is not great, which is maybe something I can work on. But
Mm.
it's definitely, I've seen the pattern formed in the past.
Fantastic. Some aspects that you also need to take into account: strictness and structure. There is a preference to working with some structure, but not hard, immovable structures in your career. So you want overarching structure and principles, but these must be able to move and be adapted. Similarities and repetition. Shy away from constant repetition, but about 1/3 of the content of your work should have an element of sameness and repetition to it. Work sharing, we're talking about working in a team versus working alone. You can work very well in a team, but be careful. Your behavioral patterns are of such a degree that, and the intensity of your team inclined behavior says that you actually want to retain a choice as to, do I give this task to the team, or do I own it individually? So there must be that sense of, can I give it or can I retain it? The moment the choice is going to be taken away from you and it's teamwork exclusively, that also might become a bit frustrating for you. Does that make sense?
And I think of all the feedbacks, this was probably one of the most accurate ones for me. Especially the part that says, I will hand tasks to others if only of necessity, or if it falls outside of my abilities. And that's absolutely true. If I love being, I love owning a situation or a task or a responsibility. But then the moment that I understand that there's something in that task that falls outside of my experience or my ability,
fantastic. Yes.
I always prefer to get other people in or delegate that form of work, so I can focus on what I can do and we can work in a team there. So this was very accurate, and I enjoyed seeing this. And also very interesting.
Fantastic. So Toy, the conclusion is there. You've probably read it. So as you would probably ask at this point, based on your report and your behaviors, so what now? Now, the system gives you full accessibility on the portal using the code that you received, and you purchased your own report online. Within 72 hours, you are going to get another link emailed to you, and this will open up a second functionality of the report where you can actually take 10 careers and match the careers to the type, to these individualized tips and some more questions extracted out of your report. So you are going to get a completely individualized cross-check as to whether the career and its content and its environment and its dynamics and its theoretical index and all the stuff that we discussed actually cohere with your current preferences. So the big thing is, do you know enough about each career to actively engage and actually answer those questions? If yes, go for it. Test those careers. It will give you a percentage index as to whether it fits your behavioral patterns or not. What if I don't know enough about a career or a career within a certain context? This is where it turns into a coaching relationship. I, as your coach, will then help you define goals. Speak to people, read up, discuss goal setting, possibly even enroll for shorter courses to get an idea of what is going on, job shadowing, that all those types of things can actually be very meaningful to obtain perspective and start building knowledge. If you are not in the position to make these radical, well, actually not radical, but these steps, if you're pressed for time, we can design some goals that are immediate and require quite a lot of quick action. So we're not going to leave you alone. If you choose to engage in a coaching relationship now, we will productively use this report and the massive amount of insight that are generated, and to craft your best way forward. So I absolutely love working with this stuff because it's not just applicable towards people that want to choose careers. It can be applied to students in terms of which study methods and study setups will be the best for you. Which behavioral patterns can we leverage so that studying becomes sensible and much more efficient for you. We can leverage it towards people that are facing retirement and they're not done with life yet. They want to ask the question, well, so what now? We can leverage it towards people that have come to the conclusion that I don't fit in this career. I studied engineering. I thought it was the best thing for me, but I'm just not fulfilled. I just quite frankly don't fit the mold. What now? This is where the content becomes extremely dynamic. Du Toit can even be productively used for people that are satisfied in their careers, but are asking questions regarding how do I move to the next level? How do I upskill? How do I enhance my career influence? So basically, for anyone from age 16 until quite very late in their lives, this can be a very productive exercise. Coupled with coaching, it can turn into a brilliant and one of the most significant steps that you can take in your life towards a meaningful work experience and also contributing to a post-COVID world and being an active participant. What was your experience of the feedback and our discussion?
Jan, I think after seeing everything, there's a few things that was confirmed for me in what I thought in my functioning and what I would choose in the future as a career or not. I also think it stimulated quite a bit of introspection, and maybe it'll help me in the future to identify other ways in which I can express myself and find functioning. I think also, given that reality, I really look forward to maybe just having one or two conversations with you after this, as well as to the practical implications. And I think what I'm most excited for is measuring one or two things that I think I would know enough, one or two careers I know enough of to this, and then deciding or just seeing for curiosity's sake how my habits fit into these careers as an indication of what I should do.
Fantastic, fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to spending some more time in conversation and grappling with the insights that we received here.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Have a nice day. Bye.